Hey guys, Molden here, and I think it's about time to make such a video. Basically, my own personal top 7 big changes for Diablo 3. Now, I was browsing forums like Diablo fans or community websites like Reddit, and sometimes there are threads coming up with people suggesting changes for Diablo 3. But I was looking at them, and most of them are really only just small incremental improvements that make the game slightly better, but aren't really big enough to really get a big player base to the game or make the game successful for a long term. For example, what people are suggesting is introduce a new tier of gems because the current ones are pretty outdated, or for example, make gems more useful in weapons. Then they also suggest to, for example, fix things like reflect damage on mobs, nerf it, tone it down a bit because it's a very strong affix right now. Or what they were also suggesting was, for example, if you have or make it so that you can display more than 5 buffs at the same time, for example as Barb if you want to keep up your rough berserk. And yeah, those are changes that people are suggesting, but I want to really focus on 7 top big changes that really could help the game as a whole and are really like useful to many gamers, not just to some. For example, not just barbarian changes that only help barbarians, but to the entire player base. Okay, and the first suggestion is, in my opinion, it's a joke that now we are in 2013 and the game, like playing solo is still the best way to play the game. There's still no incentive for group play. We were doing the legendary farming competition. We got up to around 3.8 legendaries per hour, but that was only possible because we were playing solo now. Group play really isn't supported enough in Diablo 3, and if I think back in Diablo 2, I was only, 12 years old, but I really enjoyed playing group. It was very effective and it was fun. And yeah, that's the first change. Then the second change is basically goes hand in hand with the first change, an improvement to the lobby in Diablo 3, or actually just introduce a lobby because we don't even have that right now. The community from Diablo fans already presented this screenshot, which I think is a pretty good template. It shows public games, you can select which games open, you can create your own games, you can give it a password so that your friends or close circle of friends can join. You should even be able to like select the monster power in the long term and so on. Like you also have different chats. For example, you can go to a monk chat if you want to talk to monks about monks. There could also be like an item trade chat with items that say more than 500 million worth. There could be a chat I don't know, where people are looking for players, for example, for hardcore MP10 and so on. Like that's all what people or the community could do if Blizzard would provide that system. And the third change is gear. I think, or I really don't like the fact that when I'm playing Diablo 3, I farm, but I can't use any of the item. Like every single piece of my gear is from the auction house. It's found by other players. I never got the joy of finding an item then like, yeah, upgrade. Everything's from the auction house, and I think this really needs to change. Maybe it's also time to like rethink the real money auction house. If it was really a success, if it really like kept a big player base, or maybe it would be better to like rethink the system, make it a bit different, so that more players play the game and yeah, still create the same revenue for Blizzard. Like even games like World of Warcraft, they are like so like it's not even an action RPG, but even there you find gear for yourself. For example, you kill the boss and you have a chance to get the loot drop, and then you found your own item and you're happy when you find that. But in Diablo, I've done countless of farming, countless of like free runs. I found countless of rares and legendaries, and some rares I'm not even picking up anymore because I know they can't be an upgrade anyways. So I think I like item hunting, but I also like wanna every now and then wanna get an item for myself and not just have to use this artificial system called the auction house. Okay, then number 4 is there should be more variety in farming. And by that I mean, for example, right now most people are being forced into Act 3 because it's the most effective and efficient way to farm. So people are suggesting usually, okay, increase the mob density on the other acts, but I think this would first require a lot of resources from Blizzard, and secondly also make the acts different. Like I don't want to have high mob density everywhere. I want different things. Like for example, in Act 1 I think it's fine, Act 2 I think is fine, and Act 3 is fine as well, but it's just the most effective right now because of the high mob density. Now what could Blizzard do? Now, instead of just increasing the mob density in other areas, I suggest, for example, let's say for every hour that you spend in Act 3 or in any act, you increase the magic find in other acts by 10%. So for example, if you spend 20 hours in Act 3 and not doing any other acts, you would have 200% additional magic find in Act 1 or Act 2, and then Act 1 would be better, even with the same mob density it has right now, than Act 3. And then, for example, you would wait, okay, now it's worth to farm Act 1, then you say, okay, now it's worth to farm Act 2, and so on. Like, this is just one example. I didn't really think it about, I just came up with this in 2 minutes. But if Blizzard would like really create such a different system or an incentive to also clear the acts, it would be good for the game as a whole, because people like me are probably getting tired of farming Act 3 all over again. Then number 5 change is the end game. I've already recommended some things like Survive or Die or an endless dungeon. There are countless other really good suggestions also from the community, and I just think there needs to be some kind of additional end game than Uber bosses. You know, they were fun for 1 or 2 weeks, but got boring after a while. I also noticed this when I'm streaming then. People aren't really interested anymore in Ubers and watching them. Like, everyone got a Hellfire Ring now, so what's the point of doing them? Yeah, number 6 is a competitive system. This is also suggested on Reddit. Now, if I think a Path of Exile, it has such systems and it's really fun and enjoyable. And by that I mean, for example, things like leveling competitions. Let's say Blizzard says, okay, you have 7 days now on hardcore to create a new character and get him as high as possible. Or for example, do the same thing in 3 hours. Or other things that could be, for example, the guy or a ranking, like a leaderboard for XP per hour. Like, the system automatically tracks the XP per hour, and maybe there's one guy that managed to get like 110 million XP per hour, then he would be on that list, and so on. Like, it really gives players the incentive to gear up, because right now the game is pretty easy, as some other players mentioned, and there's not really an incentive to gear up. And if there is an incentive to gear up, it would also help Blizzard, because then maybe the auction house gets more active or so other reasons. And still with this number 6 change, I also think it's time for some really competitive challenges again. Like, the game has gotten really easy now, so I think they should introduce like content where, for example, the monsters are doing 3 times the damage, or where every mob is like 20% faster, or where you actually really have to move out of poison or desecration or molten and so on, where you actually really have to pay attention to the mob's affixes. And this system, like, for me, it wouldn't even have to drop additional loot. It would be enough for me to just get achievements if you like beat this super hard game mode or super hard area of mobs. And yeah, if you maybe get some ranking, like I see it kind of similar like in World of Warcraft, the challenge dungeons, where you get the gold and so on achievements. And this should just be in Diablo. And as I said, I don't need item rewards for that. Like, this should just be for the best gear people. So they have a challenge, they can get achievements, or maybe some cosmetic changes like dyes in a certain color that's only for people that do that, and so on. Or for example, dyes that work on legendary items. There are a lot of ideas. And the number 7 change, the final change, is ladders. There should be a ladder in Diablo 3, let's say every 5 or 6 months, and then all the characters of the ladder from the last season should be transferred to the default ladder. And yeah, I think they will also like make the game a lot more active, especially in the ladder itself, because people start from scratch, from zero, and start playing again. And yeah, I don't think this is bad for the economy of the game, for like Blizzard's income from the real auction house, because then people will just gear up again and play the game. And if there's a bigger player base, I think it's good for the game as a whole. So now those were my top 7 changes. As I said, I tried to like come up with some big changes that help the game as a whole, not just some incremental improvements, because I think Blizzard is working on that anyways. Like, Blizzard is working on incremental improvements, like fixing reflect damage, maybe do something with the 5 shrines, maybe make the auction house easier to search for items and so on. I think Blizzard is doing a good job with the incremental changes, but I think they really need to like work on the big changes to make the game really good, and maybe make it top game of the year 2013 instead of flop game of the year 2012. Yeah, that was my video. Thanks for watching. I'll be back.